Hello, AP Literature students. This is Dr. Borup. I am your AP Lit teacher for next year, and I wanted to make this video to introduce you to our summer reading assignment. We're going to be reading the book Crime and Punishment by Fyodor Dostoevsky. This is a Russian author. You will be reading it in translation, obviously, and I wanted to kind of give you some background on the book and then give you some tips for how to read it and how to make the reading experience enjoyable. And it's always a great idea to have some like historical background going into a book like this, because then you'll be able to kind of like understand where it fits in history, and that can make the experience more enjoyable. This book was written in 1866, and in Russian history, which I am no expert on, but I can give you a little bit of background, this is a time period of tumult for the country. Basically, there is a religious orthodoxy that has been in place for many years, and yet at the same time the university system is growing in prestige and numbers, and there's kind of a student movement going on that it's a little bit atheistic, and it was like against the Christian orthodoxy that had already been existing. And this student movement was all about what is called existentialism, Russian existentialism, because it's the Russian version of a philosophy that we usually associate with France. And basically this is just saying, like, there is no God, there's no meaning to the world, and so how do you create a meaningful life when there is no meaning to life in general? It's a movement that was like not nihilistic. It was against nihilism. It didn't want to say that it's all pointless, so just do what you want, be hedonistic, go out and and drink and kill who you want or whatever. It was how to live a purposeful, good life in the face of this kind of existential darkness. So this is the atmosphere that we are coming into in this book. A group of people, the majority of people, saying that there's a God and God loves us, and also God is a vengeful God, and so we need to follow his rules, versus a group of people who were thinking, no, the only people who can control our actions are human beings. There is no God, there is no meaning, so how should we treat each other? And these two groups are obviously in conflict, right? And Dostoevsky creates this character who embodies that conflict. Part of him continues to believe in the Christian orthodoxy, and part of him is fully committed to this existential student movement. This is a student, his name is Raskolnikov, who has become maybe obsessive about the student ideas and rationality. And so he's thinking rationally through these problems, and the conclusions he comes to are going to be shocking for us. This book does contain some very shocking scenes in it. The crime, from the title, is brutal and gruesome and detailed. It's short, and it's old-fashioned, so you'll be able to handle it, but it kind of like, it shocks us still. It's this brutal scene, and Raskolnikov then this happens in the first quarter of the book, and then he spends the rest of the book conflicted about this event that happened, and we slowly watch his mind unravel. And it's a fascinating character study, and to watch how he is trying to negotiate this thing that he has done. So some of my reasons for choosing this book is because many of the themes that are discussed in Crime and Punishment will be recurring over the course of our year with the text that I have chosen. A big thing is going to be guilt, and who should feel guilty and when they should feel guilty, and when we should place blame on people or when we should excuse certain behaviors. A lot of it then is going to be about circumstances or determinism. Are you determined to behave a certain way because of your background? Or do we have free will, and we can kind of like work against the contexts that we live in? We'll also be talking a lot about the power of love, and the power of love to redeem, or maybe even the power of love to, what's the opposite of redeem? To I don't know, obsess you and turn you into a bad person. We'll be thinking a lot about violence in this class, and its purpose, because there is a difference between, in our culture and in most societies, there's a difference between good violence and bad violence, and we will be talking about that. We'll talk a lot about madness and how madness can be portrayed in literature and how it can reflect certain qualities of even the sane mind. So all of these are themes that come up in Crime and Punishment that, you know, we're going to be reading King Lear, we're going to be reading Frankenstein, potentially we'll read Wuthering Heights. You know, there are these books that are talking a lot about these same themes. So that's the reason that I've chosen this book. So moving forward now, we should talk about some tips for how to read it. This is a long book. It's not, you know, you've heard about Russian literature and how super long it is, probably. It's not War and Peace. It's not, you know, excessively long. You can get through this, but I will say you don't want to wait until a week before, or it's going to be a really unpleasant experience for you. So I would say take 3 weeks or so. That seems like a good amount of time to set aside for this book. 3 weeks or so to read it, maybe even a month, so that you can really like savor the ideas in it. Because it's a book about madness, there is some repetition, because as somebody is like thinking through certain ideas, and it becomes compulsive to think through these ideas, it's like Raskolnikov has this character arc that just goes up and down, you know, so you think he's resolved something and then it's like, oh, we're back here again. So that's something to keep in mind as you read, is to break it up so that that doesn't feel tedious to you, and so that you recognize kind of the truth of that experience, that psychological experience. My other bit of advice is, if you are feeling yourself getting lost, just go and check a summary of the book online, maybe a chapter by chapter summary, so that you don't get spoilers. I always use SparkNotes. That seems to be the most straightforward to use. This isn't a difficult book to understand, though. It's long, and like I said, there's some repetition, but the ideas are very straightforward. If you read Scarlet Letter last year, that's a much more difficult reading experience than this one. So the key is just to give yourself enough time to actually like complete and think about the reading. My other bit of advice is kind of for fun. There are a lot of really interesting adaptations of Crime and Punishment. Not all of them are called Crime and Punishment. There have been plays, and there have been pieces of music, and there have been tons of movies. So my other bit of advice, if you're interested, is after you've read the book, watch an adaptation or two. Some of them that might not be totally obvious. There's a 1959 movie called Pickpocket. It's French, Bresson. Yeah, the director, his name is Bresson. It's French. That's a really cool movie. There are 3 Woody Allen movies. Woody Allen's kind of like obsessed with Russian literature, and there are 3 that are like pretty much direct adaptations of Crime and Punishment. One is Crimes and Misdemeanors, one is Match Point, and one is Irrational Man. Match Point is probably the one that's the most direct. It was from 2005. There's an Alfred Hitchcock movie that takes a lot from Crime and Punishment. You're going to recognize many of the ideas in the novel, and that movie is called Rope. It's such a cool movie because it's a one shot. I mean, he fakes it. You know how in 1917, that movie that came out recently, sometimes they'll like zoom in on somebody so that they can actually cut right there. That's what Rope does. But it's almost, I think it's like 8 shots for the whole movie. And it's like about two guys who are, well, I don't want to give anything away, but yeah, Rope is a good one. And then there are others that are like influenced by Crime and Punishment, even if they are not directly adaptations. That's how Rope is kind of. Another one that's even a little bit further away is the Scorsese movie Taxi Driver. And some of these movies are, I'm not saying that these are movies that like you would be interested in. I'm just saying that sometimes it's a rewarding experience after you read a book to see how other people have interpreted the book. And with this book in particular, there is a rich history of adapting Crime and Punishment in a lot of different ways. So check out some of those adaptations if you're interested. But if you take this book slowly, I think you will like it. The experience, the feedback I get from most students is that they ended up really liking this book. That maybe there's some slow parts in the middle, but that the beginning and the ending are so exciting that they actually were like compelled to read the book. So if you're looking at the size and you're thinking, oof, I don't know, it seems really long, just pace it out and you will end up enjoying it. So I look forward to seeing you next year, hopefully in person. We shall see, and I will meet those of you who I don't know yet then. And I hope you guys are having a great summer. I'll see you later.